Do you ever wonder why, in spite of the promises of God, you haven't experienced your deliverance yet? Well, stick with me today because I may be able to answer that question for you. I've always enjoyed building things and being creative. I guess it's just part of my frame. And when I was a little boy, about 5 years old, one of my favorite things to do was to play with Lincoln logs and build houses. There were times when my baby sister Gail would sit back and wait patiently for me to finish building my little log cabin. And then once I was finished and feeling satisfied, she'd just come along and knock it over. Man, talk about a little boy being unhappy. That's exactly what was happening to the people of God in Judges chapter 6. They had been living in disobedience, so God allowed Midian to oppress them. And their method was to wait until Israel had planted their crop. And they would let the crop ripen and be just about ready for harvesting. And then the Midianites would ride in and they would just totally destroy the crop and they would strip the land bare. And so you can see this was about more than just defeating the people of God in battle. This was about humiliating them. And Judges 6:6 says that Israel was brought very low because of this. It says that they were impoverished. In other words, they were living in poverty and they were living in lack. And this caused them to cry out to the Lord for help. And at this point, the story turns to a man by the name of Gideon. And he's actually the answer that they'd been waiting for. I'm here in DeTerra Vineyard where grapes are grown for winemaking. After the grapes ripen, they're harvested and taken to the wine press to begin the process of winemaking. However, in our story, Gideon is in the wine press, but he's not making wine, he's threshing wheat. Threshing wheat is supposed to happen on the threshing floor. So why is Gideon threshing wheat in the wine press? Well, it's because he's in hiding. Remember, the enemy, if they found out about the crop, they would destroy it. So Gideon is working in hiding, but he's also living in frustration and disappointment. Then we're introduced to an angel sitting under a tree, and he speaks to Gideon. Hey, the Lord is with you, mighty man of valor. Excuse me? That's how Gideon replied because he didn't recognize any part of that statement. As a matter of fact, he had 3 specific responses. He said, first, if the Lord is with us, why is this happening to us? Secondly, where are the wonderful deeds that we heard about from our fathers? And then thirdly, if anything, the Lord has forsaken us. Well, what Gideon said, it also reflects how we really feel in some of the situations that we find ourselves in. Because we basically ask the same questions. Like, since I'm a believer, why is the Lord letting this happen to me? Or where are the wonderful things that we heard about from testimony service? And then I feel like the Lord doesn't really care about what I'm going through. And so what ends up happening is we make judgments based on what we believe God is supposed to be doing or not supposed to be doing based on His power, when really it's about the power and the passion that's within us. The angel doesn't even address Gideon's three critiques, just like sometimes it seems like the Lord is ignoring us. But see, the answer to Gideon's concern was revealed in the angel's first statement to him when he said, "The Lord is with you, mighty man of valor." Do you get what the angel was really saying to Gideon? The Lord is not dealing with you based on what you think about yourself. He is dealing with you based on how He framed you. And how did He frame you? You're strong. You're mighty. And the reason that you have the pathos that you have about certain things is because that indicates what the Lord has purposed you for. And the Lord is with you to accomplish those purposes. And that's why instead of addressing Gideon's concerns, the Lord said to Gideon in verse 14, He said, "Go in your own strength. Haven't I sent you?" In other words, go do what you were framed to do. Go do what you were called to do. Go do what you were empowered to do. Go do what you have the passion to do, because those are the things that help you define what you're truly purposed to do. Like so many of us, Gideon's passion was overruled by his doubts and his low self-esteem. He was questioning his strength and his capacity and if he even had what it took to accomplish his task. In Judges 6 and 15, he tries to rationalize why he couldn't step into this purpose. He actually makes three statements. He says, "How can I save anybody?" And then he said, "My family is the weakest in the tribes." And then thirdly, he said, "Now, not just my family being weak, I'm the least in my father's house." You see, Gideon had not accepted that he was a masterpiece, created for the good works that God had prepared for him to do long time ago. And that's our main scripture, Ephesians 2:10. Gideon didn't see himself the way the Lord made him, as being awesome and wonderful. And that's from Psalms 139 and 14. He was constrained by his memories of failure and disappointment. And Gideon was appraising himself based on his environment. And he measured himself against the circumstances, and he was comparing himself to others. And the people of God, they were living in lack because Gideon hadn't accepted how God made him and how God appraised him. The people were impoverished because Gideon was making excuses instead of following his passion and his purpose. And worse than all of that, people were blaming God for abandoning them when He hadn't. God had already assigned Gideon the responsibility of dealing with their enemy. I brought you here today to remind you of what we've already established in this series, and that is that you are a masterpiece. You are a valuable gift. And I don't know if you really heard me 2 weeks ago when I stood right here in front of this $300 million abstract masterpiece and said that you are a rare find and that you are sought after. So let me say this again. You are a unique treasure. You are a rare find, and you are being sought after. Now, I can hear some of you right now saying, "Nobody's looking for me." Well, yes, they are. You are their gift. You are the solution to the problem. That's why our main scripture today declares from Romans 8 and 19, the whole of creation waits with eager expectation and longing for the sons of God to be revealed. That's you. And the only way that things are going to get better is when you decide to show up. Too many of you are still trying to hide in the wine press, and you're actually hoping to be invisible. And what you have is a who me syndrome. You know that. Who me? And so when God approaches you based on how he framed you, your response is, who? Me? And then you try to turn invisible. And when he calls you a mighty person of purpose, your response again is, who? Me? And then again, you go and try to turn invisible. Well, you've got to remember that the scripture declares that he is your maker. So stop acting like he doesn't know you, that he doesn't know who you are, and he doesn't know what he made. You're doubting your frame, and you don't believe that you have the power that it takes. You're questioning your ability, and you're holding on to memories of failures. And you're comparing yourself to others, thinking that God should have called somebody else. God knew you from the womb. He framed you, and he deposited desires and thoughts and even ideas inside of you. And he's going to take those experiences and memories, both the negative ones and the positive ones, and he's going to merge them into your purpose, because you were called, and you know that all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord and who are the called according to his purpose. That's what Romans 8:28 means. And because he's with you, you will have the strength you need to step into your purpose. See, people are living in lack because you're still trying to hide. It's time for you to become the gift that God framed you to be. It's time for you to walk in the passion and in the strength that he deposited in you. And it's time for you to come out of hiding. It's time for you to stop keeping people waiting and show up. See, you diminish your power when you don't see yourself correctly, and that's as a masterpiece. And when you don't walk in that, the people who you're supposed to be a gift to, or who you're supposed to bring deliverance to, they're left to live in difficulty and disappointment. And in truth, many of them are disappointed that God hasn't delivered them, when actually he sent you, but you haven't functioned in your purpose and in your power. They think that they're waiting on God, but the scriptures that we're shared today reveal to us that what they're really waiting on is for you to be revealed. So stop keeping them waiting. Gideon became Gideon by living on the word and what God said about him, instead of what the naysayers and the circumstances and even his environment would try to lead him to conclude about himself. And when he decided to live according to his frame and his purpose, he and a band of 300 men, they defeated the innumerable army of the Midianites. And listen to what they shouted in that victory. For the Lord and for Gideon. Do you realize what had happened? Gideon, when he made the decision to come out of hiding and step into his purpose, he actually inspired other people to act and to emerge victorious over the enemy. And all of this happened because Gideon made the decision to show up. Now that's how we're supposed to show up. We must start feeding on what God and his word says about us. See, God is who he says he is, and he will do what he says he will do. But you've got to know that we are who God says we are, and that we can do what he says we can do. Your world is waiting on you to be revealed. So stop keeping them waiting. It's time for you to show up because you were purposed for this. And you're awesome. You're marvelous. You're a gift. And you are MVP. Go ahead and say that or even type it in. I am MVP. You are a masterpiece. You are valuable. And you are pleasing to Him.